Hi there. My work schedule has changed once again, so the video I originally planned on will have to wait. How about another response/analysis sort of thing? I threw the question to my Patreon supporters and they decided on this. This will be a reaction to Jubilee's video titled Can Socialists and Capitalists Find Middle Ground? Aside from the nonsensical title, I have an issue right off the bat. Unless you own capital in some regard, you aren't a capitalist. You might follow a political ideology that believes in the supremacy of capital, but that doesn't make you a member of the capitalist class. All it makes you, in fact, is a bootlicker, really. You'll quickly see that this conversation is actually really poor, and I personally think this is better used as an example of how not to talk to liberals than anything else. Regardless, let's take a look.
We actually aren't looking for a middle ground with capitalism. We're not looking for a lighter, gentler oppression, exploitation, racism. We are seeking revolution.
I'm glad someone already has some sense. He's right. There is no middle ground between socialism and capitalism. Any compromise with capitalism only benefits capitalism. Socialists, in essence, demand the dismantling of capitalism. Both definitions are alright. There could be further explanation, but that goes for everything, really.
My name is Liberty. I'm studying psychology at UCLA. I'm 20 years old.
I'm Sean. I'm 24 years old, and I'm in the Socialist Party.
My name's Mimi. 2016, I was the Socialist Party's presidential candidate.
I'm Shay, and I'm with the Socialist Party, and I'm 28.
My name's Jack. I'm 19. I go to community college.
My name's Richard, 19. I go to Cal State Long Beach as a chemistry major with a music minor.
Notice how there are no capitalists there, only those that for whatever reason consider capitalism, the system predicated on infinite growth on a finite planet, a superior alternative.
Humans are inherently selfish.
Selfishness is sort of one word for it, but looking out for yourself, your own survival, and your own gain. And of course, that includes the gain of those you love, is one of the main motivators of people.
A really good way that we could figure out human nature is by comparing it to animal nature and stuff like that. And you see, animals doing whatever they can to survive. It's just culture that has changed us. But I believe at its core that yes, humans, just like any other animal, are selfish.
Despite the fact that not only civilization, but practically most higher-order animals have predicated their existence on extensive cooperation, humanity being foremost. The question itself is flawed. You're shaped by your material conditions. In one instance, you can be extremely selfish, in others you can be quite selfless. The seed for every consideration is within a human being. What determines your attitude, fundamentally, is the condition you find yourself in. Those that own capital naturally reject a system that advocates for the collective ownership of it. Those that own no capital naturally are drawn to that very system. Now, the question of people who are still for capitalism despite owning no capital leads into a conversation of hegemony and other lovely Gramscian concepts, but that can wait for another day. Capitalism, a system built upon personal gain at the expense of others, naturally encultures a sort of selfishness. I think it isn't controversial to say that, in a finite world, in an increasingly precarious situation, it's better to advocate for mutual cooperation and gain, rather than a strict me attitude at the expense of others, society, and the environment.
I think even if you spend any time in a social democracy, let's say you go to Norway and you spend time there where the people see the collective good as tied into their own personal well-being. I think we have so many examples like that, societies working collectively toward a greater good.
The thing about the Nordic countries, in my opinion, is, since they're very, very ethnically homogenous, they all have very, very similar culture.
I knew this would happen. You shouldn't be bringing a conversation about socialism to the Scandinavian social democracies. Firstly, because they aren't socialist. Secondly, because their existence is a relic of geopolitical jockeying against the Soviet Union and non-revolutionary political trends of the Second Internationale. And thirdly, because social democracy is a broken system. Capitalists will always, and I mean always, defund, repeal, replace, and destroy any and every public institution if it means profit. From Greece to Britain and everywhere else, public programs are moved back and defunded because reforms do not work. Luxemburg solved this question over a century ago in her landmark work, Reform or Revolution. I recommend you check it out if you haven't already. As a second point, though, does the ethnically homogenous line strike anyone else as strangely racist? Firstly, a lot of immigrants exist in those countries, first and second generation too, unlike in the US, where a large percentage of immigrants are multi-generational and assimilated. It almost seems like a learned talking point of a watered-down dog whistle about blacks and Hispanics being too rowdy to share or something. It's unsavory.
I think competition brings out the best in people.
Especially when, we're competing for something like, let's try to create this compound that could help, the masses in some kind of health relation form. You have all these research labs trying to figure out what's the most efficient way to figure out this process. What's the most efficient way to do this? I think we need more of that sort of sense of competition, especially in the sciences and whatnot.
This isn't a point against socialism, though. Within the USSR, for example, they held competitions for all sorts of things, from tractors to tank designs. Numerous design bureaus and labs all competed to develop the best version of what they were tasked with. That's why the first man in space was Soviet, from a country that just 3 decades before was the most backward in Europe, that turned itself into the second largest economic, scientific, and military superpower in the face of Nazi destruction, multilateral invasion, constant sabotage, diplomatic isolation, and international vilification. Also, capitalism's brand of competition is just that, a brand. Competition isn't done for things that will solely benefit. It's done for things that will yield profit first. That's why the vast majority of the amenities we enjoy in our modern existence emerged out of public, tax-funded military and government research, and not private labs and offices. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Bilateral development of the same exact technology isn't wasteful, you think? Read The Entrepreneurial State by Mariana Mazzucato.
We frequently hear about the evils of monopolies. It's because, when you control an entire market, why even bother being better at anything? You've got no competition, you've got nothing to strive for, and no one can choose anything else.
In competition, the end goal is, of course, a winner. That's what people always seem to forget. You can't hate monopolies when the very system you support has an inbuilt tendency to create massive monopolies. Try this for yourself. Think of any industry, literally anything. Look at how many producers that commodity existed in, say, the 1950s or the 1970s, and compare it to now. 9 times out of 10, it's a lot fewer, with the largest of which having bought out quite a few of the smaller ones. Even in countries that have laws against that sort of thing, but that's interfering in the market, tisk tisk, you'll have 2 or 3 companies that decide to conveniently not compete with each other through either backroom deals or even flagrant public declaration. Phone contract companies, pharmaceuticals, industrial producers of military equipment, the media, the list goes on and on.
Today, everyone has the opportunity for success.
All right, if we're talking about the United States and we're talking about financial success, then yes, I would believe so. If we're talking about the world, it doesn't necessarily have to mean financial well-being or stability. I think that it really just means how you're happy and how you're okay with yourself, and you make a goal and you pursue your goal, and if you fail or achieve it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I find that there are so many resources out there that you can enact on. It's just there's some people who just don't do anything about it.
Oh Lord. The median personal income in the United States is around $33,000. The median household income is around $64,000. Given standard living costs, housing, insurance, education, and dozens of other costs, it's a miracle people manage to save anything at all. In reality, they don't save much. Many Americans can't afford a $500 emergency, let alone a bank loan for several tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to start a business. When it comes to entrepreneurs, all you hear them talk about is hard work and pulling one up by their bootstraps. They say this because the reality is far less glamorous. The only common denominator between the Musks and Bezoses, the Trumps and Gates, is generational wealth and convenient political and business connections. Simple as. Let me ask you, how many people watching this have parents that can spare $500,000 to invest in your fledgling company that, based on mainstream predictions, will most likely fail? Not many? That's surprising, because Base's parents could. How about asking your dad for some of that apartheid emerald mine wealth? Oh, you don't have any? Surprising, because Musk does. How about the infamous small loan of $1 million? You know where I'm going with this. This isn't even beginning a conversation on people worldwide who barely have a roof over their head, let alone an education, opportunities for deriving investment, developed infrastructure to facilitate business, and hundreds of other considerations.
My first thought here with this question is, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So many people in this country who solely because they exist, they're under threat, whether it's through, the police. They're just trying to survive.
This guy's doing a bad job. I don't know if it isn't just cut that way, but he's coming off too aggressive. Don't take it so personally, man. These people don't know any better. They're raised in the capitalist zeitgeist that has demonized the lightest whiff of socialism since grade school. It'll take a minute. Tedious conversations on human nature and competition are boring but very necessary. Sharpen your tools, read theory, and learn to present your arguments clearly, quickly, and convincingly. There are no shortcuts, sadly.
So everyone's very different. Again, everyone has different opportunities to what they can even consider success. In the US, though, there are a lot of opportunities for most people, though, of course, you can't say all, and there are always those who are extremely unfortunate and should be helped.
This dynamic is strange. These are questions of statistics, not opinions.
I'm sure every one of us has sat in a restaurant before or a Starbucks. Those people work their asses off. Any of these low-income jobs are not easy, and they work for pennies. If something goes wrong with their car, they're done. If they have a health problem, they're done.
You're talking about financial success, though. Success is extremely relative and can be defined in many different ways.
In a capitalist society, though, isn't financial success the most important thing?
Oh, I like him, though. Where were you hiding this guy?
No.
I've worked in the food industry for a number of years, and I can not say that any one of my companions was ever happy to be doing that.
Yeah, and if they're going to school on top of that, so they're working full-time, and on top of that, they're going to school and they're paying school.
I would consider that successful if you can go to school and you can maintain your GPA and you can also be working a part-time job and somehow affording your school. Yeah, you're doing well in life.
What? What? Do I really need to explain why that thought is all sorts of fucked up? No, dude, working a grueling 40-hour job on top of full-time school while drowning in debt isn't doing well in life. He seems to value personal responsibility as an important factor in life. Hey, I do too. That doesn't lend well to supporting capitalism, though. Historically, capitalists have tried every which way to avoid it, actually. Either by dodging taxes, dodging prison sentences, or environmental protection and workers' rights laws. They always find a way. The capitalist side, remember, none are actually capitalists, funnily enough, seem confused more than anything else. Is this how the conversation goes in the US usually?
Society should help the underprivileged.
That sort of saying, if you give a man a fish, etc., holds true. And also, who should do the helping and how is very important. Not all acts of service are equally beneficial.
I would agree to that. I myself, I'm sorry to use a personal anecdote here, but I've personally dealt with the fact that, giving someone this much aid, they become lazy. My father is an alcoholic. So since due to an injury in his leg, he gets SSI. And what ends up happening is he receives enough SSI to the point where he's not motivated to do anything else beyond just going home, drinking a beer or something like that. And I think, yes, people should help people, especially if they're underprivileged or they need the resources to push them. But to what end? That's the fine line.
But your personal anecdote only covers the small demographic of the alcoholic. Most of the people
Every example you guys have brought up has been specifically about people who are particularly poor, when most of the country is lower middle class and up. That's
not a fact. But that you would focus on this in a city, one, that gives more than half of its budget to the police, in a country that just passed a military bill, a spending bill, that's almost $1 trillion. That money goes to defense contractors.
The government paying for things is not capitalism.
Alright, a lot to unpack. First, yes, a personal anecdote doesn't cover the whole spectrum. A lot of people simply feel alienated, and that's a big issue. Mental illness has been on a steady rise, and that isn't a coincidence. Not only this, but the welfare leads to laziness line has been disproven time and time again. As for the woman's claim that most of the US is middle class, well, another bit of hegemonic nonsense. Middle class mythology is just that, mythology. The American middle class is disappearing, fast. That is if you believe it ever really existed. For the vast majority of Hispanics, blacks, natives, and other minorities, it never did. Real incomes have been stagnant even for white middle-class families, and haven't gone up since the late 70s. Finally, her point about the government paying for things isn't capitalism, I wonder if she'd extend that to all the tax subsidies companies like Tesla and Amazon, etc. get. Pack it up, boys, we've reached communism! Look, it isn't socialism either, but fundamentally, the state is a mechanism of class rule. Under capitalism, we live under a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, and the military and police are but violent arms of the capitalist state to enforce its will and what will yield it profits, both at home and abroad. Police exist to protect capital at home, and the military exists to protect, and even secure, capital abroad.
But we're in a capitalist system.
Where the government pays huge amounts of money for the things you're talking. Yeah, I'm not in favor of those things.
How about instead of spending the money on the military, how about putting those back into basic needs? Healthcare, education, housing.
I agree. The government taking our taxpayer dollars and funneling it into... They're paying for things that the military explicitly says that they don't need. That's not... Capitalism is about prices and transparency and choices. When the government takes our money and buys it because they decide...
This is actually an example of capitalism working.
That is not... That might be what you call capitalism, but when I come here saying I'm a capitalist, I'm not saying I'm in favor of that.
Well, you're just wrong, then. First of all, you're not a capitalist unless you own capital. If you don't, you're just advocating for a system that does you no good. Secondly, it's an inbuilt function of modern capitalism. Monopolies, imperialism through force, or the loan, the violent suppression of workers' movements, and so much more is the natural mode that capitalism in its modern form operates. The other guy she's talking with is a little too hot-headed and is arguing at a slightly higher level, in my opinion. He needs to calm down and explain what he's saying clearly. I'm sure you could have a good discussion with him, with people more familiar with these conversations, but a bunch of college students with no formal study of theory need a little more patience and a lot more care. I don't think he was a good pick, in my opinion.
Profit and ethics are opposing motives.
So I think at its core, to profit, you have to exploit. And again, there is nothing ethical about exploitation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of, I'm really having trouble thinking of a situation where someone could profit off of something without exploitation being in the mix, and I'm running out of ideas.
If you're running a business and you're the one up top, you would obviously walk away with more money if you pay your employees a little bit less.
I think that profit and ethics can be intertwined when seen with the corporate social responsibility module. When they treat their employees better, they give them more benefits, they raise their wages, and in turn, it motivates the workers to work harder.
See, this is what happens when people don't read theory. You can't have social responsibility under capitalism. If you do, you'll be outcompeted in the market. Those who are most ruthless, who suppress wages the most, who extend the workday the longest, who find cheaper sources of materials and faster methods of production, damned to be the toll on the environment and the workers, those are the ones that win. That's why jobs are shipped overseas. That's why, for example, car companies will lie about the emissions of their cars. Also, again, the guy is operating at a high level of discourse. To many, exploitation means the colloquial term, the action or fact of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. The Marxist definition, on the other hand, is the extraction of surplus value from workers. A fundamental difference, and one that requires explaining, which he doesn't do. Maybe he did, but it was cut out. Who knows? But again, when discussing with people yourselves, take more time, explain everything, and be empathetic and kind. Arrogance, butting heads, and frivolously throwing out terms won't get you far.
Treating your employees better than shit is not necessarily ethical. Like, raising the quality does not mean that you've raised it to a sufficient standard of treatment. Because if you're paying someone less than a living wage, that is unethical.
A solid point.
All I'm saying is, it is to some degree more ethical and can be seen as more ethical to be beating competition by raising the wages of your employees and giving them better benefits.
You don't beat competition that way, you lose out to it that way.
Also, one must be paid slightly less than they are making in worth for a company for it to be worth it to hire them at all.
You see, they fundamentally understand the basics. You just need to place the framework. At this point, an excellent segue can be made to discussions of capitalism's intrinsic faults. Move away from moralist arguments and discuss things that are universal. The falling rate of profit, capitalism's inherent crises of overproduction, resulting in boom and bust cycles and the active destruction of commodities for recovery, how the very system is predicated on infinite growth on a planet with finite resources, on and on. Talk about the irrationality of it all.
If you can't pay your employee the minimum amount of money that they need in order to live, you have no business being in business. And I think also there's a tendency from the conservative side to skew away from sort of objective fact. I mentioned the MIT living wage calculator, right?
Yes.
That's a scientific model.
Wow.
That 29.25. So as a company, if you can't afford to pay your employee a living wage, that's just the minimum that they need in order to live, right? Get the fuck out of business.
See, he's already turned her off from whatever sense he could be making. No matter how well of an argument you make from this point on, by personal insult she probably wouldn't internalize it or engage with it in good faith. He turned an opportunity for radicalization into a who's right competition. Please, keep the disheveled, hot-headed socialist stereotype a stereotype. There's only room for one Zizek in this world.
Why are we even talking to you when you have all the facts and we don't know anything?
My point exactly, he fucked up. Please, use this as a learning experience. Getting argumentative won't get anyone anywhere. Turn down the zeal. Those aren't your enemies, and this isn't how you build class solidarity.
I don't know.
It's hardly worth my time.
Well, we would, sure.
It's hard to really lean towards one side or the other if everyone is just sort of stating all these coherent biases and not accepting any sort of thing from any other particular side, which is why I'm sort of just, I'm trying to understand your side, and I'm trying to grasp really my side of it, and again, going back to sort of that mutual understanding of what can we do next?
Nothing. This isn't a middle ground discussion. It's either we sacrifice the earth to relentless overproduction, or we coherently plan production in line with environmental standards. It's either we further destroy workers' movements and forcefully underpay people for further profits, or we develop an economy based on mutual benefit for all in the spheres of education, healthcare, social well-being, women's rights, on and on. Capitalism outlived its usefulness over a century ago, and now has permanently overstayed its welcome. This is no longer a discussion of political choice. It is now, as Luxemburg said all those years ago, socialism or barbarism, humanity or extinction.
That sort of mutual understanding needs to be there if we're going to ever continue to see what's best for the U.S.
I think one reason why, you often see like folks on the left, the socialists, communists, anarchists, et cetera, they're so passionate, and there is anger, seeing the suffering and the oppression and the exploitation, the racism, et cetera, you sort of feel this urgency, like we're constantly under sort of this self-criticism and self-reflection about like, well, how do you package what can be complex ideas into ways that are very palatable? And I
That's
think,
me every hour.
and I think like, if there's a failure on the left, that would be one of them.
I don't understand how he can be so self-aware and not at the same time. I understand his anger. I'm a recipient of imperialism myself, both military and through the IMF loan. But at the same time, we need to know how to properly discuss with people. Be smart, have good points, and pick your battles. Some people you can be unrelenting with. The propagandists and shamans of the system. If you see Dennis Prager on the street, go all out, why not? But when it comes to everyday people, learn to modulate and discuss in the best manner.
Despite that we definitely disagree on pretty much everything, it's good to know the real common ground here is we as like millennials and Gen Z and stuff, we're actually like talking about this, like whether we were able to convince the other side of anything or not, at least we give a shit about it. This is stuff that we need to talk about. This is stuff that we need to be aware of.
Amen.
Especially given our leaders. So yeah.
This guy was my favorite. Excellent work, really. You don't convince people in one conversation, but enough discussions with educated arguments presented with empathy really do win people over. And that's that. If you enjoy this video, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you to Anarcho-Stalinist, Dante, Rick Chang, Lars Utneveig, Fletch, The Red Lettuce, Jolie, Comrade Smirnoff, Jose, Maud Sognir, Miller Veglin, John Edward Carrion, Clement Weiss, Patrick, Faisal Hussein, Joseph Nicholson, Morgan Amol, Violet XD, Daniel Hyman, Zero Adams, Andrea CC97, ASDF FDSA, Anses3, Zach, Zachary L. Petrovsky, D-Lop, Vegan Comrade, Ramal Bedier, Caleb Reeves, Oren Vongdi, Ides of Marks, Biblaridian Fan, Abdullah Thutp, Gonzal Lud, Cash Nelson, Preston Mains, Set, Sam Korth, Rima, Big Dummy Jack, Hugh Jass, Princess Charlotte, William Hargis, Alex Dexheimer, Comrade Saul, Anarcho-Marxist, Richard Scott Wigton, Lee Gloucester, JC Diaz 547, Faisal Hussein, Ryan Hodgkinson, Samiran Sarkar, Annex Magnus, Patrick Mansouri, Philip Corrales, Jenny Enox, Comrade R, Alexander Shendi, Wild Bill, Brandon Vergara, A Comrade, at Southern Marxist, Close Sniper, Colin Morgan, Because Butts, Alex Bookbinder, Alex Benishek, Comrade Goat, D. Lang, Darius A. Bernhall, John Bernstein, John Poland, Noel, Nobody, Paul Luders, Pauline McDeesey, Rocco, Rose Hogginson, Scott Radburn, Alan Plum, Brandon Persuade, Coach Cinnamon T, Comrade Benito, Comrade Pengu, Dal McFarlane, Eli Gerzon, Eugene Simonovsky, Ferratahan, Garlic Bread, Grammar Antifa, Granola Joe, Industrial Robot, Wes, Shongja Hu, DV Gold Gamer, Phyllis Dakey's, Job, Spooky Scary Socialist, Jordan Follows, Khan, Kyle Rapp, Liam Sapanen, Libertarian Stalinist, Mass Strike Now, Matt, Michael Reddy Webster, Namratha Prabhu, Natalie Taylor, Amar Abdi Jabbar, Parker Cushing, Ring, Rudy, Sid Singh, Sussy M, Ted Teddington Tedsville, Toki Mukai, Tristan Drian, Veraldor, Zatarani, and Zaran Arsen. Thanks for watching.